Liz, welcome.
Thank
you. And Oscar seems bored before we started. Grumbling away.
He will grumble and he'll probably go to sleep in a bit once he's listened to us talk for a while.
Oscar's the dog for people listening. Or you may catch a glimpse if you're watching. We were talking off air. What interested me before you came on, the cybersecurity side, what you do now, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So you have a cybersecurity role in Civvy Street.
Yeah.
Your background is, I'll ask you to elaborate on it.
Okay.
Is ex-army, ex-RAF. Unusual. It is unusual, yeah. And the fact that, so you're talking about the fact that your cybersecurity role now, you didn't think it was something that would be an option for you getting out, but then you're talking now that your background in the military, anyone's background in the military almost can set you up for a cybersecurity role. So we'll definitely come on to that because it really surprised me. And what was that, 2 minutes ago we were talking? Tell me your background. What came first, RAF or Army?
The RAF, which is why it's such an unusual way round, because I went from liking hotels to, from checking in to digging in, as you would say. I was an air traffic controller in the Air Force. That's what I joined. I wanted to do that since I was 9 years old. I knew from the age of 9, my parents indoctrinated me and my brothers really well. And I knew from the age of 9 that I wanted to join the military. I was about 11 or 12, I think, when I focused and realised that probably air traffic would really suit me. And it did. And I absolutely loved it. I joined after a little bit of false start, I guess. I joined when I was 24. After a few other odds and sods, had a little bit of life experience. And I went through officer training straight away and went to my first unit, which was Coningsby, via a hold at Waddington. And that's really important because that's quite an interesting little thing. I went to Waddington to hold in the air show office after I'd finished officer training. In the Waddington Air Show, big RAF air show, used to be phenomenal. They don't run it there anymore because they've basically got too many people working there and it's just too big to do. And so we used to have this air show office. It used to be run by ex-military, and then a whole load of holding officers and stuff used to come in to man the phones. So I was sitting in the middle of this porter cabin with no windows, faced out to a car park, and taking phone calls from people who would ring up and go, excuse me, I'm stood in the spotters car park outside and 2 Italian F5s have just landed. Could you tell me the tail number of the one on the left? Like that, yeah. Really sorry. You're actually going to have to pay to come into the air show. And I can't see anything because I've got no windows. God. So it was that was relatively interesting. I was also holding in air traffic there as well. And the reason that's key is because 20 years later, I finished my military career on the other side of the car park in an office facing the place that I'd started 20 years previously.
You weren't plane spotting though, were you?
No, not at all. I couldn't even see the runway from there.
What's worse, plane spotters or train spotters or twitchers?
Oh, crikey. Train, I think, because I don't understand that. I get a real buzz out of watching aircraft. I live near Scampton. My parents have their garden backs onto where where the Red Arrows practice. And seriously, there is nothing quite like watching them. And I'm going to hold my hands up, and I'm really sorry to many of my mates that listen to it. I am a bit of a Red Arrow spotter, and I'm so sorry. But there was actually nothing better than watching them do their craft because it's phenomenal.
I've never seen it.
Have you not?
No, I've not.
Just the close flying is superb, and I've been really privileged through some charity work that I've done with the John Egging Trust to sit in on some of their briefings, and they are incredible. In
what way? Well, the briefings are incredible.
Yeah,
go on.
Absolutely. So going through what
tell you're an officer.
Well, no, because they go through what they're going to do, what they're going to practice, what they need to improve on, and it's really straight down the line. But as they're walking and talking through it, the guys are there doing the hand movements of what their hand movements in the cockpit's going to be, and they reckon that by the time they start their season, they could fly it blindfolded should they need to. Goodness, so it's absolutely incredible, and watching them go through and work out when, and it's kind of like, I need to be a little bit further up on that. My flaps need to be there. I need to do this, that, and the other. And you kind of go, that's incredible. And I was there with a group of school children who, actually a really special group of school children. I volunteer with the John Egging Trust.
What's that trust? Explain.
So John Egging was a Red Arrows pilot who died at, I think it was Bournemouth Air Show.
That was the most recent one?
No, I think Sean was more recent.
Oh, sorry, okay.
I think there were a few around the same kind of time, and then there was one at Anglesey last year, which was very tragically killed their engineer. But John's wife, Emma, Dr. Emma Egging, said that he'd had this kind of dream to facilitate kids who don't usually get a chance. So the kids who are the grace kids at school, or they come from a background that isn't going to enable them to succeed because the expectation isn't there. And just for the want of getting a positive role model, then they could really, really achieve. And we see just amazing results. You have kids who are carers, who have or come from rurally poor backgrounds, which is really interesting, whose perception of achieving is to go and work in the local pub. And then suddenly, they go, I want to be a cook, I'll go and work in the local pub. And suddenly you're able to open up some leadership and some teamwork with them. And then they're going, oh, I don't want to work in the local pub. I want to be a proper chef. I want to go to catering school. And it is that kind of changing their parameters and their views just by getting them involved in something and showing them that there's more out there in the world. And so it's incredible. So I worked with them, and one of the first things we do is this bit of shock and awe piece of taking them to Scampton, and they sit and they watch a Red Arrows brief. They get a tour around the jet. They get to sit in the jet.
How old are they?
Those kids are 13.
Awesome.
And they kind of sit there eyes wide. And if I tell you that some of them they don't want to go up the stairs because I'm not going to get up the steps into that jet. I'm too frightened to get into that jet. No. And then you coax them into doing it, and you just make it a little bit of fun. And then they get to go and sit and watch the Red Arrows brief, which people pay thousands for. If it ever gets up to auction, the price is one of those money can't buy auction prizes, and these kids get to sit there, and I really don't think they appreciate quite what a special thing that is. Mm-hmm. And then they come away from there having, spent time with the Reds and had them briefs, and it's absolutely fantastic. And then what we do is go and take normal, everyday leadership tasks that you would do at any kind of, military training, no matter what level that's at, whether that's at kind of Lance Corporal level and all the leadership courses going up, you take those and you turn them into something that school children can do, and you do the teamwork with them in the first year, and then the second year is teamwork and leadership, and then the third year is more leadership, and they do communications, and they blossom. It's like watching a flower open. They're blooming amazing, and they don't know that it's all them. It's all inside them, and all we do is make them use it. It's you're empowering them, and they're amazing. So it's been a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I just think that how few children would get the opportunity to experience sort of the leadership and what do you call it, the leadership and command task kind of training. Yeah. At that age, which is not unusual, but to be delivered by sort of ex-military and delivered by military.
I've taken a break since I've started my new job. But the great thing is that now I'm settled in, I can go back and say, right, what do you want me to do? Because I'm really looking forward to going back and maybe doing some one-to-one mentoring with some of their older kids, I think, is probably the way it's going to work. But they're reaching thousands of children now around the country. So it started off very locally to Lincolnshire, and it now is countrywide, but it's based around where the military bases are. It's expanding all the time. It's incredible.
So what year was that started, sorry?
The John Egging Trust, you're going to catch me on early 20 teens, I would say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
not very long at all. No.
How did we go on to that?
I was talking about the Red Arrows and how I was able to go and watch the briefing, and how I was actually just becoming a really, really bad aircraft spotter.
But that was after your stint in the RAF.
Yeah, it was. It was well after that. So I did Battlespace Management and worked with the Army on the Telek invasion of Iraq. And I worked with OneDiv for that. Came out of that.
Who was OneDiv?
So OneDiv Army Unit, one Division, one United Kingdom Army. That
was the main. That was
yeah. So I was working in the divisional headquarters.
Yeah. But who was part of OneDiv? This is my ignorance now.
Okay.
Seven.
Okay.
There's nothing above Power Reg. There's no one else.
All right. Well, 16 Air Assault Brigade were part of. We're part of OneDiv. So we had 20 Brigade, 7th Armoured Brigade, and 16 Air Assault Brigade part of us. So the Paras were there, and they were part of it. Right, and we had 3 Commando Brigade chopped across to us as well.
I didn't know until this moment.
No. So that we were the higher headquarters that sat above that. So with
the Battlespace Management, that is 360 up, ground, air.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it was. There's Marine as well.
Yeah, it was. They were under naval, and then they chopped across to the land.
No, I mean Marine forces, as in Navy. Yeah,
correct. Yeah. But but you have there's a separation. The littoral battle space, so the coast essentially. So that you have the coastal area, and then there's a transition where Navy commands that, and then it comes across the land. Or
what's the transition area based on? Depth of.
It's basically the coast. There's a line. They go, there we go. There's
like
the coast.
5 miles out or something. Yeah, right, got you.
So,
okay, cool. Yeah. What were you doing with the Battlespace Management? What was your role?
Did all of the kind of procedural planning, so that our aircraft could fly in our area and our guns could still fire. Essentially,
must have been a nightmare. Not a nightmare, but that. It was complexity of liaising.
There was a lot of planning. We were working for the Americans.
For the Americans?
Yes, because they were our higher headquarters again. Yeah. So we were working we were working for the Marine Corps. And they were actually really awesome because they're about the same size, or at the time, they're about the same size as a corps as we were as a military in total. So
crazy.
But they have their own air force within them. They've got their own air force. They've got their own navy, and they've got their own army, if you like. So it was very much like dealing with our own sort, if you like. It was quite a lot easier. It was really interesting looking at American command and control culture. Yeah. And actually they were really cool to work for compared with, in my opinion, it would have been a lot more difficult to have been working for a pure army, an American army unit. I think that would have been
interesting. It'd be interesting to hear your perspective on that, working with them, because from my perspective, on the lower end of the scale, when I work with the Americans, and from what I've sort of researched on the way their training is and the way they're the way they go about things, it's completely different. In that, like from my end, well, you might know this, you might not, but for the benefit of other people, and Oscar might know this, right?
No, he probably doesn't.
Oscar, yeah. It's sort of a basic level. So we talk about infantry, and we talk about a platoon. A platoon's made up in the I think it's roughly the same numbers of like 30-ish. They probably got more, but 30-ish blokes. Or ladies now, 30-ish people, 30 soldiers, yeah, and they're split into three units, so 3 sections of, I don't know, let's say 10. Well, I do know, but let's say 10 for the sake of argument. And then there's a platoon commander who runs the platoon, and you've got a platoon sergeant, sort of his sidekick. It's a complete,
that's not true, the other way around.
Complete disservice to platoon sergeant. It's not the case at all. Right, so you got platoon commander who runs the show, and then you got 3 sections. You got 3 section commanders. So, and the way that in the UK, platoon will be given the mission, the platoon commander will turn around at section commanders and go, right, I want you to go and take that bunker, for example. And in the UK, the soldiers will say, the section commander will go, okay, boss. He'll disappear, and he'll have like 2 minutes or whatever in terms of how long has he got to. Sometimes he won't have any time. Mm-hmm. The point is, the section commander decides how he's going to do it, because the platoon commander says, this is what I'm doing. And the platoon commander organises the other 2 section commanders to be able to support that mission. Mm-hmm. The section commander decides what to do.
Correct.
With the Americans, the platoon commander says, right, I need you to take this bunker, and this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah, they're a lot more prescriptive, and it's also one man, one job as well. So I think their take on mission command is not as good as ours. I think British military is great at trusting. We do trust. We empower our soldiers, sailors, and airmen with an awful lot of responsibility. And to do that, you have to have trust, and you know that they've been trained really, really well, and you trust that training, and you trust what they've been told to do, and that they'll go and carry it out. And you know, they always come up trumps. Or very rarely do they not. And if they haven't, it's not because. Usually not for want of trying. You're right. The Americans are very procedural. This is how you're going to do it. This is how it's going to happen. And you've got to go from A to B, and you've got to go via A1, B1, A1, A2, and A3. And if you find A3 is compromised, then you come back. Whereas our guys would go, right, A1. Well, I can't quite get there, but I'll just go via D, E, and F, and I can still achieve it, because they'll work around it, because we all know that no plan survives first contact as it is. So it doesn't matter. The minute you step out of wherever you're stepping out of, the plan changes immediately and you're reactive. And because we empower our guys so well, they're able to just be really flexible of thought and come up with a way that they can achieve what they've been told to do, rather than going, sorry, can't do it, we'll go back, or extract, or whatever.
So from your end then, that high level that you're operating at, and that battlespace experience, management experience in Telic 1, what did you see why did you What was your differences between the UK and the USA side of it? Because you were saying you preferred it. In a way.
No, I think it was the fact that we were working for the Marine Corps rather than working for the Army.
Okay.
So if we'd been working for the US Army, that we went. I remember this one particular meeting, and we'd been in it for all day. And the guy that I was there with and I had the ability to make decisions on behalf of the UK's Army division that was there. We were empowered to go and say, "This is what we will do." And we sat there in this meeting, and my one-up, I couldn't believe that I was spending all this time in meetings. It's like, where are you? We need you here. It's like, if we don't go to these meetings, we're not going to get the airspace and the battle space to work in. And we were at this meeting, and we sat there all day, like 7 or 8 hours or something, going through, making all these decisions, going, yeah, okay, so we'll do this, and you'll do that, and you'll go there, and we'll have this bit, and we'll carve it all up, and this is how it's going to work. And right at the end, these two full-bird American colonels went, right, so we'll come back tomorrow to ratify the decisions that we've made today. And we were all like, excuse me, what now? We're going to... No. We just told you we could do this. Yeah, we've got to take this up to our generals and give them the agreement. So, and this is where this procedural thing came in. Yeah. Because they at that level were not empowered to make decisions. That was really telling. And the one thing I had to do was actually physically take people down to be in front of the person who was coordinating their special thing. So one thing that stands out is unmanned air vehicles. Their perception of what ours could do at the time was Phoenix versus what level theirs were playing at. And I think for the benefit of people who are listening, they were looking at something in tens of thousands of feet, and we were looking at something that could just about achieve $2,000 if we were lucky, and certainly not in the heat.
The Phoenix is hand launched, isn't it?
Yeah, it was off a bungee, wasn't it?
Yeah. I got a few of those that crashed. There
were a lot that crashed.
What else is there? What was the other one they had? There was Phoenix, and there was
we've had a few now because there's quite a few that
wasn't another one hand launched at the same time. I don't know what it was. And but the Americans were operating then on the Predators, weren't they? Yeah.
So kind of, and so when we're saying, look, I just need some airspace, they're like, oh, right, do you know what? You can just crack on in your area with those. Thank you very much. But I had to physically take the CO of that regiment to go and meet the guy that was coordinating the airspace. Because
CO of the Phoenix unit, right? Okay, got you.
So, which was really telling, and again, that comes down to the kind of the trust issue. And I remember one notable occasion, I needed to speak to somebody, an American private soldier on the end of the phone. She would have been a Marine on the end of the field telephone, and she was speaking to the person that I needed to speak to. And I, Marine Smith, please may I have that phone to speak to Captain Blah? And she put it down because I hadn't gone through her gunnery sergeant. Oh God. Who was actually quite fierce. She was little and ginger. I know a few little ginger people. One of them is a really good mate, and she's amazing. This one was just a little bit scary and a little bit scary.
What's wrong with ginger?
Nothing at all.
What, if she had brown hair, you said little and brown hair?
No, not. Yes, I would. I'd have called her a pocket rocket or something. I have a ginger gene, so I don't go sunbathing. I end up with lobster as a colour rather. I
ended up. I used to out there all the time. I said out there, out in sunny, warm countries. I don't. My arms, my face, well, my legs are still white. My arms and my face, I just don't burn. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. I go a bit brown.
Yeah.
Where have you been? Yeah, but then take the top off. It's like squatty tan.
Squatty, yeah. There's nothing more fetching than that on a female. That's all I'm going to say.
Battlespace Management. So what? So after that was. Hang on a minute.
That was 2003. It was RAF. Yeah. So I was RAF in an army unit. Came back from that and went to 2 amazing years doing Hercules landing zones in the middle of nowhere. That was wicked. That was really good fun.
Hercules landing zones in the middle of nowhere?
Well, kind of either beaches or out into interesting places. I only ever did it on exercise because there was nothing else going on at the time that we needed to. It was between the really meaty stuff in Telek and before Afghanistan had kicked off. And just as I was leaving, we were looking at scoping for Bastion.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're telling me Hercules landing on beaches?
Yeah.
How...
Because once the water goes out, the sand compacts, so it becomes like concrete. You can't do it on every beach, and we test. But people can see it on Taunton Sands. In fact, I think Top Gear did a thing on Pendine Sands, and they had a car on there at the same time as the Herc was on there.
I would have thought. I thought it would bed itself in a bit.
No, it doesn't unless there's an onshore breeze, and then it gets a little bit sporty.
You have anything go pear shaped in that?
My very last one was at all of the minima. So it was all of the minima that I could get to. So it was 1 knot off the top wind speed that I needed on crosswind. The sand was, I think, 1 off being soft that I would have to have phoned back for authorization. And it was all just coming together. It was like the perfect storm. And I'm sitting there going, right. And I was literally going through the books going, right, I'm legal on that. I'm legal on that. I'm legal on that. I'm legal on that as well. And just kind of go, yeah, we're good. Which is a good thing because it was already on the sand. It was just the fact that they wanted to put some more kit on the board, and I said, right, okay, I can probably allow you to get the kit on board. That will make you that heavy, which means you need this amount of space. Yeah.
So to go back, was your first role as an air traffic controller?
Yeah.
So
fast jet air traffic control.
The way you went then through the RAF, is that sort of the natural route progression in terms of promotion? Well, I don't mean natural by easy. I mean just that sort of route up.
Not really. It was a bit of an unusual one. I realised that there was I understood how air traffic control could be applied to land, and I went on a course that did it, and I found that really interesting in terms of splitting it across to the battle space, because if you can see in 3D, then the natural element to add in is the land and the bullets going through, and I could understand how that worked, and it just really interested me, and I thought that was really, I just thought it was really interesting, and I actually thought I could add value. So I kind of put myself forward for it a bit, and then got picked for the other job with the Hertz. I must stop bashing this microphone.
You won't be able to hear it on the.
Okay, that's fine.
That doesn't mean keep bashing it.
No. So I was very unusual, and then I came back from. I finished that job and got posted up to Lossiemouth, which wasn't great. Far north of Scotland. Far north of Scotland. Yeah. I arrived up there on the 26th of January. And it rained every single day till the 6th of May when I came back down south.
So, what was the end of the RAF career then?
I was up at Lossie. There were some interesting things going on. I wasn't massively happy up there. I'd been given a bit of an ultimatum about promoting. I would have to go to the school or area radar, and the school is the air traffic school, which would have been a great place to have gone. It just wasn't really for me at the time. And and
not at your level, though, lower level.
No. And the CO of regiment that I'd known from an exercise that I'd done back in it was 2002, arrived up at Lossiemouth with the Rapier. The RAF gave Rapier the air defence capability over to the Army.
Oh, okay.
And it was their last standards and evaluation exercise. And this guy walks into the mess. Liz Murray, good to see you. What the fucking hell are you still doing wearing blue? You've got a green core, and when are you coming across? His words. I'll never forget it. I was going to say, Colonel Barry, nice to see you. Anyway, we had quite a long chat, and I'd been looking to transfer for a little bit because I wasn't massively happy where I was, and I couldn't see a means of staying in the Air Force and doing anything that I wanted. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I couldn't really stay in the air traffic branch at that time. Yeah. For a variety of reasons. So yeah.
So what happened?
Took a year, and I transferred to the Gunners.
You took a year?
It took a year.
Oh, it took a year. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
only because I had to go through a variety of. I had to go and do Westbury as an exemption candidate, which is if you apply to the Army, you go to Westbury for regular commission board, which is a kind of their leadership exercises and tests and that kind of stuff, just to see if you fit. Now, it was really interesting going there as a serving officer because I was with people who were not commissioned at all, and it was a really difficult balancing act because the guy that was in charge of my syndicate was the same rank as me, and I was already had more seniority than he did. So first of all, I had to go and prove that I could lead.
What rank were you at the time?
I was a flight lieutenant and he was a captain, so I was captain equivalent.
Yeah.
And so you have this thing of, right, I can lead, but I also have to prove I can follow. I have to prove that I'm savvy enough and emotionally intelligent enough to be able to do that, and yet I've still got to push myself forward. And it was right. Okay, this is going to be an interesting one to do. Must have done all right because they accepted me and pulled me in, so it's fine.
So that's surprised me because I thought the commission was a commission. I mean, you just transfer and go and do your trade training kind of thing.
The commission is a commission, but they have to take you into the service that you're moving into. Yeah. So what I didn't get a new commissioning scroll or anything like that, but I finished on the Friday at Lossiemouth, talked down my last aircraft onto the ground, which was actually a mate of mine, which was great. Oh. And then drove down south and took over a load of logistics stuff, which was completely outside of my comfort zone. And I don't mind saying I held on by my fingernails and propped up by some amazing juniors and seniors who were just fantastic.
What kind of logistics stuff were you doing?
So I took over a signal store, an armoury.
Oh my God.
Some vehicles. Oh, no. I think there were 100 odd vehicles, of which there were, I think 82 were actually off-road and not fit for anything. And my guys were away. So my guys were all away in Iraq doing another job. It was an interesting time, and when the battery came back, which was sort of, my very loud dog having a drink there, when my guys came back, they dug out blind to sort it, and one guy in particular, Birdie, was amazing, and he's now, I think, WO2 gusting WO1, superb, top bloke. And without them, they'd come up to me and nudge me and go, "Mum, do you think you should be signing this documentation?" I think I probably should be. What am I signing for, and when am I doing it next time? So I made no bones of like, guys, I am, I'm running blind on this. I need some help. So in the differences in the RAF, you are officer trained and then you become a specialist in your field. So you are a pilot, an air trafficker or whatever. So you have this kind of professional qualification, profession within it. The qualification doesn't quite have read across into Civvy Street, which is, I think, designed to keep you in the RAF. And then when you go to the army, you're an officer first above all else. And your specialism is almost irrelevant. You go and do some training within it, but actually once you get, so if you're a gunnery officer, you commission into the Royal Artillery, but you are an officer first, and then you go and do your specialisation so that they can basically put you into any role and know that you will lead. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Interesting differences. The other one, I don't know if it happens with, well, I don't think it does happen with the RAF, is that it might happen with the army, actually. I think it's won't really hear it. No,
it's fine. It's just that he's
the dog's scratching. I don't think if you heard that. Is that when a captain promotes to a major, I might get this wrong, I think they all have to do
Staff college.
No, an element of infantry command training.
Oh, there's in order to promote, you have to have done a variety of different courses. I got exemptions because I had my seniority, but then I went to staff college afterwards. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Apart from that, how did you? Apart from those differences you just described, what was it like? What was in general? What was your experience being an officer in the army compared to being an officer in the RAF? What was preferable from the way you could command and the way you were commanded?
It's a difficult one because I had really great leaders in both. I saw some really great leadership in both, and I saw some really poor leadership in both. Yeah. And the way those leaders exerted their authority was very different. But there are still people in both services that I would follow to the ends of the earth and not just out of curiosity. And then there's some of them that I wouldn't follow through a door just in case. So, it's a really tricky one because the thing that used to frustrate me was that there's a snobbery between services, which is, it's there and it's a rivalry and I get it. But actually, if the army would take on board some of the stuff the RAF does and they're a bit more relaxed about, and vice versa, there we go, and vice versa, they would both be really amazing places to be all of the time. I think the one thing I didn't like particularly about the army was that some of the regiments do not value some of the officers in some of the regiments are really poor about the way they refer to their men. And I used to get quite frustrated because to my mind, everybody had a value and everybody has an intelligence, and to make an assumption about somebody because of their rank is a terrible thing to do, because I know that the only reason I joined as an officer is because I didn't want to work my way up to be an air traffic controller by starting right at the bottom. Because I had the qualifications, I went, right, I'm going to go in at that level. I could have joined at base level and come all the way up through the ranks. And I chose to not because I'm too lazy to do that, basically. I have two brothers, neither of whom were commissioned, both of whom are more intelligent than I am. And so when I used to hear people refer to guys just in quite a derogatory manner, as though their guys were stupid. That used to really wind me up because
we could say rank like your Toms are fucking morons or whatever. Like,
absolutely, that kind of thing. And you just kind of go, but they're not. And just because they're that rank doesn't mean they're stupid. And actually, if they're telling you something, they're telling you something for a reason. I've never.
That's different. Because what I was thinking there is that when you were saying, well, generally referring to Toms or, and I'm talking.
We all do.
It's a cultural thing.
You always do. That always happens. But it's when someone comes
being dismissive of
somebody's opinion just because of the rank they're at. Even actually,
that's bollocks.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It might not be. It might not be expressed in the way they're expecting to hear it, or that they would hear it from their peers. But actually, it's still valid. And if they're raising a concern, then you should be bloody listening because they're raising it for a reason. But it used to wind me up that people would take that. So and that's something you don't see in the RAF as much because actually everybody's there with a specific trade and they're doing a job for a reason. Yeah. And so those are probably the two major differences that I saw. I think.
Well, yeah, I think I'd be quite specific as well. I certainly wasn't where I was, and I know a lot of my peers weren't like that. Mm-hmm. But then I worked with a tiny fraction of my unit of the army, and others may not be the same. But the thing, and that what you're saying there, that having that ability to accept anyone's opinion, but the first thing in my mind, you think that goes across anything, not the military, anything, in any company, organisation, whatever. And for me, the first thing the first positive thing you pop in your head is, regardless of whether it's a moronic comment, it's almost like brainstorming. No answer is a stupid answer because the one thing that person's got that you haven't got, and you can never have what they've got, is the different perspective.
Absolutely.
That's it. You can't.
And you don't always have to follow what they say, but if you just take it into account and go, oh, okay, and that's where you go. You almost make a risk assessment. If someone's telling you something, you go, okay, so I'm hearing what they're saying. I understand why they're saying it. I also know that it's mitigated because of this, and this. Or, interesting. I don't think we've done anything about that. Let's go and have a look at it and see. So it's either because you've got that you've got knowledge of what it is that you're doing, or you've gone, oh, actually they've brought something up that I hadn't thought about. And a lot of the old and bold people have got a load of knowledge, and they watch the wheel get reinvented, and they sit there and go, oh, here we go, we've got a square wheel again, and we'll turn that into a round. We'll knock the edges off in a bit, and then we'll get back to where we were 10 years ago.
It's an interesting perspective on the army. So what year did you transfer?
2007.
And you were there the army for how long?
So 10 years, there and thereabouts.
Where did you finish off?
Finished off at Waddington, working in the Air Battlespace Training Centre.
Which
is across the car. Which is based in a hangar immediately across the car park from where I started my career.
Goodness me. So Battlespace
Training Centre. It basically teaches. It's really cool. There's some stuff on YouTube where they went in to have a look at them, so that you can look it up on YouTube. It basically teaches 3D awareness and operational decision making to a variety of units. And I went there initially because we were training gunner units, so Royal Artillery units, to go out to Afghanistan. And then I went back there after my back injury, actually, and that was it was a good place to go to because it was a Royal Artillery post, and it was somewhere that I could recover and get better. And I was actually given the space to get better there. It was amazing. So, when we're talking about bosses, I probably wouldn't have had that space to have recovered under an army boss, but I did under an RAF boss. So it's 6 and 2 3s really.
What was the injury?
I got kicked in the back by a horse and ended up having to relearn to walk.
Yeah,
it was a completely ridiculous injury that happened. I'm a bit of a believer in fate, and fate. You end up where you're supposed to be. And if you're not going the right way, something happens to force you down that road. And that seems like a little bit weird. The unit I was due to go to on the Monday to start my new job, I hadn't been able to find it. And there's only so many times you can go to a base and say, please can you tell me where the front door is for that? And I'd done 3 times. And at the time my hair was quite blonde. It's a bit purple now. It's still blonde, but it's got some purple bits in it. And there's only so many times you can go to the guard room and go, excuse me, I don't know where that is. Could you show me where it is? Literally couldn't find the front door. So right, okay, we'll find it when the flags are up. I'm sure there'll be flags up on Monday. It'll be fine. And this was the Sunday night. And I'd never been able to visualise myself going in day one, which had never happened to me before either. I'd always been able to imagine myself walking in to a place day one. It'd never quite been what I'd expected, but I'd always been able to visualise it before. And for this particular job, I'd never been able to, which was all a bit random. And on the Sunday...
You mean you tried and you weren't able to, or you just hadn't?
Tried and hadn't been able to.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then on the Sunday night, this... because I like to prepare. So, you sit there and go, okay, so on day one, I'm going to do this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get all my kit prepped. I'm going to make sure that I've just daft stuff. I've got some cash because I don't know what the meal arrangement is, and I won't have had a mess number by then. So you just start sort of to get all that stuff sorted. Couldn't get that squared in my head for this particular job. When you bear in mind that by that point I'd been in for 13 years, it was a little bit weird that I couldn't do that. I should have been able to.
What was the job?
Like 16 years. That was a job. It was an army job in an army unit. So there was that, and and then I went and picked up all my stuff from a garage on another army unit that I'd basically, before summer leave, I'd ironed all my kit and left it there so that I could just drive down and pick it up and go to where I was living and met some random thing. The dog went into a field with a horse, and I got permission from the woman that owned the horse to go in and get him. And
he ran off. Oscar ran off.
Yeah, there was a bitching season amongst a pack of dogs that the woman who owned the horse had.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have been on the base, but there we go. It's something completely different. And and he went off. So as I went over to get him, horse was really docile. Walked towards the group of dogs. I checked that the horse was. I knew the horse had come over behind me. I'd actually spoken to it on the way across. I've ridden all my life, and well, since I was 3, since I was actually able to sit on a horse.
Pretty much all your life.
Pretty much all my life. In fact, I used to ride around here where we're recording. Yeah, not very far away at all. And so checked that the horse was facing me, and it was behind me. It was behind my right shoulder, and it was facing me, and it was a good distance away. I leant forward to put Oscar back on his lead. I hit the deck on my face, and it turned around and tried to double barrel me, and then it came back to try and trample my head while I was stuck on the ground.
Really?
Yeah, really.
What triggered the horse?
It had that in it, and there were no signs of it. It was a complete psycho horse. Nobody else would go near it, and it wasn't allowed to. There were supposed to be no other horses in the field with it either. No signs, no nothing. I had a really good case for suing, but it was just another plate to spin. I'd preferred to get walking, and I could never, have put someone through having to have their animal put down for any reason. If I'd have gone for an insurance claim, which I could have done, then ultimately that would have resulted. The stuff that would have come out would have been.
Would have put the horse down with that, really?
I think it would have happened because it was dangerous, and it might not have done, but I catastrophized it. I catastrophized it to the point that it would, and I couldn't be responsible for somebody doing that, or for somebody losing a load of money either, for what had been an accident.
What was a horse? Thoroughbred or something nutty?
It was a chestnut, and it was called Frenchie, and I've no idea. I don't know. I could picture it, whether Frenchie. It was thoroughbred and bred or not.
Sounds like a bit of a knob.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. So what was the injury? What happened?
I just got quite a serious back injury, and found that I'd actually got a broken vertebra that was there. I was really lucky. It's a stable fracture, which is good. So that vertebral fracture was there, and it apparently existed before, which I only ever had one back injury before that, which was right at the start of my army career. But it had been pinged and made worse by this one. And my entire right side spasmed, so I ended up with this kind of... It's easy... When people say what happened, it's easy to say, broke my back. Far easier, because actually that's exactly what is there and what had happened. But in my right side spasmed, and I ended up kind of... with this arm that was stuck up here and unable to move it, and then I couldn't move my arm around, and also I was walking from my neck, so I had to relearn to walk, which was quite interesting. Took a few months.
How long? Yeah. How long was the recovery?
I aimed that I knew I was always going to walk again. There was no way I wasn't going to.
So you actually weren't able to walk?
I was able to walk, but with a stick. With a stick.
Yeah,
I needed a stick to walk. So, and I knew I wanted to run again, and I wanted to ride again, and I wanted to be good at what I could do again. So the boy, Oscar, was amazing, because I would sit down and he would come out with me for short walks. I was high as a kite on tramadol, which is a disgustingly awful drug. And I would have told you I was operating completely normally. And I meet people now who say, "Hi Liz, how's it going? How's the dog? How's the back?" And I'm like, "I've never met you before in my life. I was on quite a high dose of tramadol. So he would come and make me get up off the settee, like, come on, I'm going out for a stroll. And he was really good about not running off. And bear in mind, it was taking me somewhere in the region of about 30 minutes to walk maybe 400 yards. It was a pretty epic thing, and he could have really taken the mickey, and he didn't. It was amazing. So we would get up quite often in the day to go and do that. And
Well, I reckon they can sense when you're poorly. Dogs.
Oh, superb, yeah.
From my experience with the dogs I had. Definitely. You just know when they chill out, don't they?
Yeah, he was brilliant. Brilliant boy.
Yeah. Right, so back injury.
Yep.
Which means you didn't go to E-unit.
I didn't. I was caught in a little bit of a thing and supported by some amazing people. And this is where you start to look and you go, okay, so... And I know there's been an awful lot of criticism from some quarters of the way that the army has dealt with the welfare side of people who've been injured. Now, when you bear in mind that I was a civilian injury, and so I didn't actually fall into any of that post-operational recovery side of the house. And I'd fallen through the cracks between the NHS and the army for a little bit because I'd been treated at an NHS hospital, and there's this almost assumption that you just kind of get swept up and back into, and actually you don't. You've got to physically go and go, hello, I'm here, I'm injured and I need some help. And so then that takes a little bit of time to ramp up as well. But I was supported fantastically by 4 or 5 just brilliant people
within the military.
A couple from the unit that I was due to go to, who obviously had to take on my caseload. Both of whom I count as really good friends now, JP and Pete Beaumont, who were amazing. And then when I ended up going to Tedworth House because I had a bit of a post-traumatic stress response to my injury, and I needed a little bit of help to get over that. And in the meantime, I was allowed to live at Tedworth House, which is really unusual. It's the Help for Heroes facility. It's not what it's there for.
That's the main one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's not what it's there for. It's not. You're supposed to do a 2-week rolling recovery program, and I was basically kept there by a guy called Nick Perry, who was the house sergeant major at the time.
What year was this?
This would have been 2014.
See, there's one in Colchester called Shavas
VC House. Yeah, there is.
VC, yeah. And I was in. I've got a mate who was in there for flipping heck months and months and months. I thought they were for that.
No, they're supposed to be for a 2-week rolling recovery program, but they made exceptions for people. I wasn't the only person who was living there, and basically I had someone who went into bat for me. It was Nick, a guy called Nick Perry. He was a WO2 in the Irish Guards, who was the house sergeant major. Now runs his own charity, which is superb. You probably do. He's Veterans Lifeline. If you ever see any of my stuff, it's the charity that he started and runs and is doing amazing work, fishing struggling veterans out. He calls it out of the fast running water, and he's quite right. He's probably been responsible for preventing, I would say, tens, if not getting on for hundreds of suicides.
Really?
Yeah, he's a superb man.
When did he set up the charity?
2015.
Yeah.
It's good. Doing really good work. So he basically kept me there and allowed me to recover. And then there were some other really good mates around and about. A mate of mine, Louis, who's currently walking across Antarctica. He is utter inspiration, was brilliant. Took the dog to work for me so that I could go and do some rehab, or just daft little things, people who just stepped up and were superb. And all the guys that came to check if I was all right, with the notable exception of 2 from the unit that I was going to, but all the guys that came to check to see if I was all right with the guys who'd worked for me, they were all my juniors and seniors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they were brilliant, and they're all mates now because that was just amazing. Yeah,
it was amazing. Yeah. I think what you mentioned about the army getting slagged off or the welfare side of things. I think again it goes back to it all depends on who you are, what unit you're in, who's in positions in that unit, and whether you got idiots above you or not. Because I think it all depends how your case is represented.
Because I was a major, I was expected that I would just sort it for myself.
Oh, really?
And that was so when the people went into bat for me, they were having to fight really hard because there's an assumption that because you're commissioned, you're able to deal better with an injury than other people. And actually, when you're poorly, you're just poorly. If you are injured, you are just a person dealing with an injury, and your rank doesn't come into it. It really, truly doesn't. You're just trying to get through day by day. Rank has absolutely no element in that whatsoever. You are just trying to recover. And because there is this assumption that, well, you're obviously intelligent and you're a leader of men and women. You're like, yeah, that's fine, but I'm actually really poorly at the moment. I just need a little bit of help and support. And that's the thing that goes missing is people, ridiculous. And there were brigadiers and group captains and squadron leaders and wing commanders and lieutenant commanders who were all there, all getting that same kind of thing. And the expectation was that they would just know how to recover and how to recover well. And you don't, you just need that support.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Tell me, I want to get on to, sorry, with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to fast forward slightly.
Fine.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah, I know.
Because that interests me. I mean,
So I started to transition well, and this is one of my big things. You have to be emotionally divorced from the military. You have to have made that emotional separation, and it's not that you're not loyal to it. It's just that you've seen that you want to move somewhere else, and you don't feel that it's your all-encompassing need to do. And I think to transition well, you do that. So I started networking last September, so September 2017. It's seriously networking.
While you were still in?
Yeah. I drank an awful lot of coffee. We're drinking some good coffee here today. My coffee tolerance has gone right up, I tell you. And so an awful lot of coffee and met an awful lot of great people. Mostly ex-military actually, who then feed into the military net. There's a massive military network, certainly in London, in the big firms, who are amazing at putting you in contact with people and suggesting things. And they meet you and they go, oh, do you know what? You could be really good at this. And I remember saying to guy called Al Bowman, who's brilliant. He works for Deloitte, and he turned around and he said, "Have you ever thought about cyber or banking?" I went, "Don't be ridiculous. Cyber banking? Are you mental?" Essentially, was what I said. Not for me. And fast forward to the following July, and I take on a job in cyber in HSBC.
What happened? What changed your mind?
What changed my mind? A realisation that actually I could do it, and everything I'd done in the military thus far actually had a real bearing on it. I'd come from the connected unit at Waddington, which was it was so we had connections to a variety of simulators. So you start looking at protecting that information because the simulator is connected in. You start looking at those connections and whether they're secure, and then you start looking at information protection. So the military is really good at protecting information, and for the last say 50 or 60 years, that's always been paper information and data, and then all of a sudden it's gone electronic, and suddenly we're into this cyberspace where everything's kept in in clouds and whatever. So the protection needs to be there, and the one thing the military is really bad at saying what we think we're bad at, and we think we're bad at cyber. We think we're bad at we need to get better at procurement. We need to get better at this, better at that. Actually, the military is pretty good at a lot of those things. It's pretty good at project management. I don't think. There are very few people who come out of the military who aren't actually natural project managers, for starters, because that's what you do. You were talking about, the company or the section commander earlier on. He's just managing a mini project. That's what he's doing. He's working out what he needs to do, how he needs to get there, and what the end result is. That's a project. So when you start to look at that, and you start to look at the information security and email hygiene, making sure that you're not taking emails in from outside, you're not sending stuff to your home account, all of that kind of stuff. And suddenly you're into this cyberspace. And what I was doing at that job was dealing with doing a lot of liaison between the defence contractors and what the military were doing, and so civilian firms essentially working with the military to provide. When I was at Waddington at that unit.
Go on.
Sorry. Yeah. So actually, they have their own information protection requirements because they have commercial responsibilities, and so you start to look and you go, okay, so I've got one firm here. Now their competitor firms are A, B, and C. So A can come in, but only to see that. B can come in, but only to see that. And C can't come in at all. So you then start to look at how you're protecting that information around and about. And that's only the same as protecting data and what you can do with it and where it goes and all the rest. And so actually it sits really quite naturally into cyber. Yep. And there were when I started to look at it, and it took me a couple of months to have that. It was almost an epiphany of work when I was working there, because I'm dealing with people. I'm dealing with demystifying what we do with the cyber technology and how we make that work for the bank. That's what I do, and all I do is I translate it, and I have a load of examples of how to do that. So, for example, the bank you would recognise a traditional bank robber as being a man typically in a balaclava with a sawn-off shotgun coming into a bank. okay, well, a cyber criminal is no different. They're still the person who wants to do bad things to get money or data and harm people. It's just that their sawn-off shotgun is a computer these days, and they're coming in through a different way. They're still looking to disperse that cash in a way that they can get. So they'll get outside to a getaway driver. That's fine, but their getaway driver is now an electronic means of that. They disperse it through a system and send that money off to a variety of different places if they can. So when you start to look at the crime is exactly the same. It's just done in an electronic manner. So and it's a case of saying, okay, so how do we educate our people so that they know how to shut the front door and put the shutters up, so that they can't get in, and how do we still enable us to conduct our business with that? So it's a really interesting space to work in, and it develops all the time. And I don't know, it just sits quite nicely with the jobs that I've done.
So is it predominantly the human factor you are running when it comes to cybersecurity, or trying to influence your role?
I basically translate what we've got technologically wise to understand how we're able to operate, and I pass that information to and I brief the variety of people within the UK element of the bank.
Got you. It is interesting, especially these days with the blockchain and all the rest of it. I won't go.
No, let's not get onto that because I'm absolutely not expert.
I won't.
I
won't. No, but
I tell you what is really interesting though. I went to a briefing on Estonia the other month, because blockchain everybody thinks is as cryptocurrency. But blockchain is a way that you can.
Cryptocurrency is a use of blockchain. Absolutely,
but that's what people think is the main. People go blockchain, cryptocurrency. Estonia rewrote their history and stored it in blockchain because they had to when they came out of the Soviet Union, because their history had been rewritten for them. So they reclaimed their taken over by the USSR. Part of that, they've now exited that, and so that they could take over their own history again and take it back and make sure that no one could ever change it ever again. They've written it and it's stored in blockchain because it's there forever and ever and ever in cyberspace. It's a really fascinating study to read. It's just one of those random things you go, that's so clever.
Well, that's the thing with blockchain. When you talk about blockchain, people think Bitcoin, but it's not Bitcoin. It's blockchain is a technology on which Bitcoin's the famous one because it's the first one. And the second most popular one at the minute is the second most successful, if you want to put it that way, at the moment is Ethereum. And I was listening to another podcast funny enough earlier, and mine as well. I do a bit of mining, and so I sort of interested in it anyway. One of the facts that came out with Ethereum is that apparently, so take the cryptocurrency side away of it being used as a monetary value or as money, is that the majority of its use, the majority of its use, Ethereum being used, is by financial institutions and organisations for securing the transactions and all the rest of it. I mean, there's all sorts with it. It's that's one of the things that, this cybersecurity thing is interesting. Is that we talked about cloud storage earlier, and going back to there's another use of blockchain. There's a cryptocurrency called Siacoin, SIACOIN. Right, we'll step off this in a minute.
Your brain kind of goes like this.
No, it amazes
it's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah.
And so Siacoin, the way Siacoin works, well, if people don't really understand the way blockchain works, so and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think I've got an handle on it. Is that we'll take Siacoin as an example. Siacoin is a cryptocurrency, and essentially it's cloud storage. Now, you and I know you got to use Dropbox or Google Drive. You upload a file to Dropbox, it gets stored on a server or servers, a finite number, a very small amount. And if Dropbox gets compromised, then your files get compromised and they're gone, right? Or compromised and they're not gone, but they've been compromised. Download it again. With Siacoin, it's cloud storage, but done over the blockchain network. So when I upload a file, everyone's involved with Siacoin and either mining it or as a share, like a computing share of it. I upload my file, it gets distributed to the whole network. So that file gets split into, for example, 1 million different parts. And for anyone to access any one of those parts, they need to have the key store that I have.
Yeah.
And only I have it, and it's on my computer. But even so, if someone manages to compromise one of those 50 million parts, just that part goes, all my other data is not taken.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to go and try and read that, just let's say it's a Word doc, for example, try and read that Word document, well, you need to try and compromise 50 million users to get all 50 million parts together and decode it and access it.
Yeah.
Go on.
You're absolutely right. The one thing that there has been, which is really interesting, is the first Bitcoin hold-up, which was a knife at somebody's house at knife point. Give us your password and give us your money. So you've had massive amounts of technology, but if you're not clever with your security details and who you are and what you're doing, then you can be compromised in a good old fashioned manner. Yeah. So you're absolutely right, and they are blockchain, Bitcoin, the kind of crypto side of it. It is really, really secure, but it can be compromised in a good old fashioned manner. And that's that's coming back to you talking about cyber and security and all that kind of stuff. Just really daft things. The military is really, really good at being secure. We're naturally paranoid. Who's watching us? Why are they watching us? And what are they doing? And actually, that kind of, I would call it a healthy paranoia, feeds really nicely into cybersecurity in any forum, not just where I'm working, but sort of every single place is right. Who are we protecting against? Who's trying to get to us? Why are they getting to us? What's their modus operandi? What is it we're protecting against? Standard. And the other thing that's really amused me is I sat down at a desk the other day, and it was a leadership thing. And the first thing is, what's the situation and how does it affect me? I was like, 7 questions. But there's only 5 there. That's interesting. So they chopped it down to 5, and that did amuse me because it was basically the 7 questions just sitting there, and but done for Civvy Street. So this. I think probably what I'm trying to say is that we have so many transferable skills coming out of the military, and just being able to sell those to a civilian organisation is key. Because you can get a job anywhere doing anything, because our skill set is so unique, and the ability to add value is incredible. So if I'd ever gone to the intelligence corps and said, please, I'd like some information on that, and they'd go, all right, okay, so that, I'm going to go and look at that, I'm going to go and research it, and they'd go and get me the current information, and the so what, and what that means for us as a unit. And that's one thing. So we've got information on this, and they go, no information on this. Could we go and get some? And that was the difference. There was that kind of proaction is very different in Civvy Street. And I think for me the biggest shock is realizing that it's just a job. It's just a job for people. It's just, and really it ought to just be a job for me. And actually my loyalty is, I've got to get it done. It's got to be the best of my ability. And certainly I need to just dial that down a little bit, because actually my life career is probably done, and whilst I'm absolutely thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm utterly committed to my role and my job, and I will work all hours God sends to make stuff right, actually I'm not paid 24/7 anymore, and I can have the ability to have a life, because that's healthy for me as a person. Switch off and leave the office. Absolutely. Which is more difficult to do when you get to work at home as well, but then that's, you got to be disciplined. Really be disciplined. And that's an interesting point. Actually, you step out, and when I got out, I went into the Middle East and worked out there doing private security, and but then when I left that, so I was very much in the military mindset, and very much, you're working when you're flipping working. And if that's 4 a.m, you don't argue with it. You get up and you work at 4 a.m. And, you're getting in at 3 a.m. and then back up at 6. You're just doing it because you're with ex-military guys. It's just what you do. And it was that kind of environment. Albeit not obviously offensive action. It was security. And then when I came back to the UK, I ended up as a corporate health and safety manager for a decently sized company. But I still had that mindset. And it was, a lot of it was working from home. Yeah. There was travel involved as well. And when it was travel, I didn't grumble, so I got to be there for 6 a.m. Did you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get, because that's my problem, is working out, that if I'm traveling on business, actually, unless it's a hard set course, I can make my own time and I can travel on work time. I don't have to be, if it was a military thing, you go, right, okay, working days. Depends on the organisation. No. That's, to be fair, that's fair. But that's what you organise. Is that I don't always. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I am where I need to be for 8:30 in the morning. Yeah. And certainly when I go to work in my usual office, I'm absolutely there. I'm there well ahead of time. But just this realisation that actually the expectation is that your travel time is part of your working day. So it is. Whereas before, I wasn't right. Okay, so I've got to be somewhere at 8. That means I probably need to be there at 7:30 to get in through the gate. So therefore, I need to be up at this.
It's a difficult one to get past. It goes against your principles.
It really does.
As well, what you think then is, well, that means I've got less time to achieve the aim if I'm going to leave at 8:30 because from networking day starts, I'm getting until 10:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to say when I came back, I was doing that working from home thing, which is great. I thought I'd struggle with it, but it was great because I get into routine. But I'd find myself, I naturally wake up early and I'd be up at 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I start working at 6. But then the way I'd play it off my head, I'll have a break when I want because I'm doing over the hours anyway.
Yes, exactly.
And then like 7 p.m, you work to 7 p.m, sending emails or reading documents or writing documents, whatever. And it gets to that stage. But
I find myself at night. Or in the evening. That's when I sit there and go, I've got nothing else to do. I'll just do a bit of work.
But you know why that is? One of the reasons. So your brain is more creative at night. It's more logical in the morning.
Right.
So I realised that, and I read that somewhere, and I sort of realised retrospectively, in fact, when I was working in the Middle East, I've got a bit of an entrepreneurial streak to me, which is all right if you can control it. But when you sort of got a bank of money and you're like doing a 12-hour stint as a security manager on a shift, and there's not much flipping heck, I got to the stage where I'd wake up the next morning after shift,
and
I go, what the what's this? And you remember like purchases I've made, websites being bought, company names being registered, and think, what the that idea is never going to work. So I literally had to teach me, even to this day, if I come up with an idea in the evening, it's sleep on it.
Yeah.
And then I wake up 90% of the time next morning and go, you are flipping mental. Because I remember how logical it was to me the night before. And then in the morning, so you're more creative, your brain's more creative at night. And it's more logical in the morning. So, you're working at night is when sometimes you do some of your best work. Writers, a lot of them will say the night owls, because at night time they do some of their best work. That's just the way the brain is. It's the way we're evolved. But where's it going with that? So going back, you were talking about, you were talking about your role you're in now and realizing the ability that you have and the transferable skills you get within the military and sort of being able to bring that to market. That's one side of it, is that you, a person realizing what they're capable of, and I completely agree with you. There's another side to it, is finding an organization that has that opinion as well, and the kind of organizational people that are more willing to have a more equal approach to, well, you got someone here with degrees coming out of the years, not much life experience, and they've got the qualifications, and you got someone here who's done loads of that stuff. For example, project management, a lot of life experience, but I haven't got the qualifications.
But this is where you sell yourself before you get there, and it's why a CV is only really part of it. I said I did a lot of networking, and I approached every single networking meeting as an interview. I dressed as though I was going for an interview. I went with the expectation that I was going to be grilled in the same way as I would be at an interview. So essentially, by the time I met my now boss, who I met at it was a military internship event at HSBC, and I remember sitting there going, crikey, this is very grey and very masculine. Crikey. And my boss is female. She's wearing bright pink. And she really, really dynamic lady, great leader. And we had a natter, and she saw something in me which was great, and so I was given the opportunity to apply for a job role that came up, which was just absolutely superb, which I then got when I was interviewed through the process. So I went through the process and had to supply my CV and had to fit all of the, tick the various boxes, but if I hadn't have networked to that, I would never actually have applied for it in the first place. So that was the thing. But this is when networking comes in, and making sure that you're not just networking in your comfort zone actually as well. I was offered 3 jobs, one of which was in a defence contractor, which was my soft landing, because it was sitting in my area. It was sitting in air defence. It was my area of expertise. It would have been amazing to work with the guys, because one of them both of them I'd worked with before. One of them had been my Sergeant Major instructor when I was going through gunnery instructor training. The other one had been a corporal within the training wing who had also known on Telex. So people that I known a very long time. Would have been amazing to work with them. I wanted to get out of the defence environment though, and I wanted to work separately and prove that I could. Actually, was a little bit a part of it. I was offered a role with a consultancy, again consulting back into defence as well, and that again, but that job would have been great. And the guy who interviewed me, who I would have been working for, was absolutely superb. And I that surprised me, that because I'd actually used that entire process as a bit of a practice, because it was the first interview process I'd been through, and I kind of went, oh well, we'll see how far we get. And then they offered me the job. I was like, okay. Right. And they all three came up within 10 days of one another as well. So I had quite a choice to make about whether I went for the easy option or which one I went for. And I actually chose the one that was more challenging for me, which is the one that I'm in. Yeah.
I'm the networking side. Completely agree with you. And I back when I left, I can go about that entrepreneurial streak. I ended up set up a website, like a website where it was to show. I sort of understood early on about the power of the networking side. Every job I've ever had up to this day, with the exception of one, has been through direct communication with someone. They know me, or I've met them previously, or it's been referred. That's network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those jobs haven't been because I applied on a flipping website.
No.
It hasn't been. There's been one like that.
It's really key, and I think it's a thing that people miss. And the reason they miss it, and it's something that and I keep saying I'm going to, and I absolutely am going to do this, is go back to the resettlement people at Waddington particularly, because I said to people what I was doing, and I was booking loads and loads of networking appointments. I was banging from one to the next, making real use of my resettlement time. And the trouble is, everybody goes, oh, you need to network. And then they don't tell you what networking is. And I was really lucky because I was taken... I said about the guy Al Bowman who works for Deloitte. He took an hour out of it. I went to a military event at Deloitte, and I sat there, and he was a person that struck a chord with me. He said, people hire people. And I went, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense to me. I'll contact him. So I LinkedIn contacted him and then asked if we could chat. Or in fact, I asked if we could meet for a coffee. And so to have that kind of talk. And he said, well, look, I'll phone you. And he gave me an hour of his time on a Friday afternoon. And it was just the most valuable piece of time where he said, right, okay. And he went through what he'd done, what his mistakes had been. But he also went through networking. He said, need to network, you need to meet people for coffee. And then follow it up and just make sure that you follow up every connection. I went, that makes so much sense. And that's the thing that you don't get told. You go, all right, you need to network. And no one says, right, okay, so you need to go out and meet people. You need to then arrange to meet them for coffee, because what you're after from them is the introduction and the idea. And then you need to follow it up with a thank you, or you make yourself a little bit unique. So Al said, send people a card to say thank you for their time. And that's a really clever idea, because it's something you would naturally do to be polite, but you don't think it's appropriate in that circumstance. But actually, you're suddenly doing something that's unique and people remember you. So you end up with that thing. And basically, my advice to anybody transitioning out of the military is you first of all make sure that you know that you're leaving, mentally know that you're leaving, because the military is really bad at holding on for people, and the people that don't succeed are the ones who hanker after the career that they could have had or think they should still have. And I think that certainly before you hit WO1, I think there's an element of, in the last 2 years of service, there's always that carrot of, well, you might get promoted and you might stay. And that can be right up to the last 4 months. And that doesn't give you that opportunity to make your emotional detachment and start to think, yeah, I am actually leaving. Because I don't know about you and how fast your career went. My 20 years flew by, and doesn't seem like 20 years in any way, shape or form. And all of a sudden there I wasn't, big wide world. So yeah, networking and just making sure that when you meet someone for coffee, you are there, you're on point, you're treating it like an interview. You meet for coffee, you have questions that you want to get answered, and you start to try and work out where you want to go and what you want to do. And then when you get offered introductions and they email you, because they're brilliant, the people are brilliant at trying to get you into jobs because they want to, and they'll email you and you email them back straight away, with the thank you, with the arrangement, working out when you could meet them or when you can meet for a chat, and just being really proactive about it. And it's all about that part of the networking, and the fact that you have to get your coffee tolerance really, really high, really high to do it. But that's the stuff that you don't get told. You're just expected to know that. And it makes real sense when somebody says, yeah, you follow up every lead. You go back to it. You don't just leave it. You don't just go, oh, that person's emailed me, that's great, and then leave it 3 weeks. You've got to follow it up, and you've got to be really proactive. And that's the way you transition well out of the military. Yeah. And it's also the way you get into jobs, because if you enter the CV sift, you will be there forever and ever and ever. You need to be not entering that CV sift, or given the recommendation. Most of the large firms have recommendation schemes, and so if you're doing the recommendations, then if you get an employee recommendation, then you will 9 times out of 10 get an interview out of it. So,
I think is it the difference. Yeah, what you're saying is bang on. There's two signs of networking. Is that where you're one-on-one-ing with those connections that you may have met through other connections that you started following up with. You haven't spoken to them for 5-10 years. You know? And your first email isn't, have you got any jobs? It's, I say, bro, you know. Just
after some advice.
And
that's the thing is you don't go, I want a job. You go, I'm after some advice. Can I pick your brains?
I need to start well before.
Absolutely.
But then the other side is the sort of the networking events, like you were saying. I mean, it's especially for not non-commissioned officers or like privates getting out. They have that networking, and they have that stand, and they get into a room. I've seen it a million times because I've got a mate who started up an organisation called Levers Link. Free service leaver networking events, basically.
Okay.
And I've seen it a million times. I've seen it several times when I've been able to go along, and there's always a couple of people who are by the door walking in and stood there looking. They don't know what to do, you know. And it doesn't matter. So let's go back to the CV system. From on that lower end of the scale, lower in terms of lower time in the military, and lower rank on the chain. Yeah. They invariably have less professional connections, and they will end up having to do that CV system. I know I did, and the way people, but the same principles apply. What you're saying, people employ people. So if a recruiter's got two CVs in front of them, and those two CVs are exactly the same on paper, exactly the same age, exactly the same gender, exactly the same. Not that you can take gender. No. Right, you're saying exactly the same, hypothetically speaking. But that recruiter spoke to someone on the phone because someone on the phone rang up and said, "I sent you a CV in yesterday. Did you check? You got it? Yeah, I did." And they sound like, and that person sounded pleasant on the phone. Even just this, the recruiter is going to choose. The influences them. They're going to choose the one who they spoke to on the phone. It's sounding nicer. Same as if they spoke to someone in a networking room in a room, and I've met someone. I've met a million people that night, and I'm following up with all the people I did.
Absolutely.
And they say, I've got a role. We've got a role here. Send your CV over. Well, they may not know from Adam, but do you know what? They spoke to you.
Correct.
So they know you're confident enough to speak to just speak to someone. Yeah. And again, they haven't spoken to half the other people.
And I've heard you're talking about it happening. I heard it happen at 2 or 3 of the events that I went to, and my heart broke for the people that were speaking because they go, well, I'm seeing there's a lot of officers here, and I'm only a staff sergeant, warrant officer, flight sergeant, I'm only a, and it's like, no. If you're going to transition, you are never only at anything. If you have achieved anything, you are in the army. I am a, and it's a case of knowing that you are valuable regardless, because what people do is to see themselves off straight away because everyone's saying, oh, they've got no confidence, and they see themselves as, below, and it's a case of going into those events feeling that you are equal to the task and to everybody else that's in there, and in fact knowing that you are, and seeing yourself off because you kind of go, oh crikey, everybody else here is I think I've made an assumption that everybody here is commissioned, so I'm going to come out, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say, I'm only a such and such, am I employable? It's like, well, actually, mate, no, because you've seen yourself off by saying I'm only a, which shows that you don't have the confidence in your own ability. And my heart broke for the guy that did that because he'd have been brilliant. And when I chatted to him afterwards, you're like, why did you say that? He went, just trying to be honest. It's like, no. You sell yourself. I am a middle manager. I've been in charge of this many people. I've done this many projects, and that's where you have to fake that confidence, but you have to know that you're equal. And I said to you earlier on about the gender and diversity thing. I had a chat with a whole load of ladies who work in insurance, because women typically are really bad at saying what we're good at. People go, you're so good at that. Oh, don't be so silly. I'm not. And that's kind of a very female thing to do. But I never felt at any point that I wasn't equal. I wasn't equal to the people that I was working with. And I didn't change to fit in. People changed their assumption about me, whether for good or bad. I don't really care whether they rated me or not. To be honest, I had a really, really great 20 years. But I never felt that I wasn't equal. Doesn't mean, and I said this to you earlier, didn't mean that you don't have those times of going, crikey, I'm not sure I can do that. but I never felt that I wasn't equal in where I was. And that was the way I've approached all of my networking, is that I didn't ever think that I wasn't equal to the people that were there. And in some cases, I looked at it and gone, oh, crikey, it's a 1-star. Okay. We're both going to be civvies soon. So, and actually, by the way, he's 10 years older than I am. So he's got a far greater mountain to climb, because actually you've got to come out. I know of a 1-star who went into one of the large organisations he went, Christ, he said, I work all hours God sends because I used to know what to do instinctively. He said, and no, I don't. And I'm up against all these graduates who know exactly what they're doing. He said, I'm really struggling to keep my head above water there. And I thought, yeah, I can see that. And actually, so if you go to these events, everybody is on an equal level. And that's one of the really big things that I want to take back to the career transition people, is to say, look, got to empower people so they don't come out with an I'm an only because they're not. If you've been in the military, you have so many transferable skills. And I was so surprised to see what they are. And you sit there and go, oh, so you don't do that already then? Oh, okay, fine. Well, I know how to do that. So how about I just, you can have an influence into so many different areas.
It's trying to convince, or trying to show people getting out that they have those transferable skills, and they'll hear that on the.
They don't believe it.
You've got transferable skills, yeah, but they just don't know. It's not that as well. They don't know.
True.
It's like you can't. You've got
no measure.
Yeah, you don't know what flipping a project manager is until you step out and you sort of, you've kind of been a couple of years in it, and you actually really start to understand what project managing is, or like you're saying, like information security management. You talked about earlier. It's and how you can apply your skills to that. It takes a while to really understand it, but giving that confidence to someone to be able to understand that the potential is there. Mm-hmm. It's it's a shame there isn't a longer amount of time for the career transition stuff to be able to do that, to be able to show people that. It's but if thinking about it now from what you're saying, maybe a major part, or one of the biggest parts of your career transition should be, or could be, networking. All right. So if you got, mine was only, my workshop was only 3 days.
Yeah.
Now, if one day that was like a CV workshop maybe, and then put me on to someone or a mentor or whatever, which was CV stuff, and the other 2 days was networking event. Yeah, imagine like a road trip, bang, 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 just chuck straight in.
Because they offer up CV workshops, they're great. And actually, I was quite surprised by what was on offer with CCP, because I'd heard differing reports, and actually the one I went to was brilliant. And of course they offer these kind of career fairs and stuff, which is basically, I was so frustrated by the ones I went to. The ones I went to locally were very much looking for engineers. And I didn't want an engineering job. I'm pretty much a people person. And even though I'm in a tech job, it's a people job. I do an awful lot of people interaction and speaking to people. I don't sit there data bashing all day. I take the products of that and report it to other people, but and fuse the information where I need to. But I went to this one and there were an awful lot of flight sergeants and chief techs ex-flight sergeants and chief techs looking to hire people who were like them. And of course I turned up. It was a lovely summer's day. I was wearing my civvy outfit, so I was in a skirt and looked pretty female as opposed to what they were expecting to see. And they kind of looked me up and down and went, I'm not sure we've got anything for you. And I said, all right, okay, so what? And the trouble is, that's like a red rag to a bull for me, particularly when I'd not really found anything that I wanted to speak about. Oh, okay, so fine. So what do you do? And they went, well, what's your career been? And I said, well, I was an air defence missile instructor. I said, do you not have anything in that? And at that point, they're like, oh, all right, okay, fine. and I had no wish to work in that, really. And whilst I was offered a job within that sphere, it wasn't the one that I wanted. But I thought, yeah, right, okay, I'm going to waste your time because you made an assumption about me by looking at me. And I think we have to be, people have to be very careful about that, because coming out now, there's a diverse group of people hitting Civvy Street, male, female, whatever people identify as, and they're amazing. There is just this brilliant skill set, and for them to sit there expecting to see themselves coming in is really short-sighted, because they'll miss out on the innovation, and there are plenty of innovative people coming out of the military.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially especially the last few years.
Yeah,
there's been cutbacks and that. Yeah, it was interesting. I'm looking at the time, and we've been going for almost an hour and a half.
Wow.
I know, yeah, flies by. So how long have you been in the new job?
Since July.
enjoying it?
Yeah, I am. It's a challenge. There are challenges every day, and I learn new stuff every day. And that's the one thing. It's a proper matrix organisation. Trying to work out how everything fits in is quite difficult. But I've had real help to navigate it, and it's really, really quite good.
If so in your line of work from the cybersecurity point of view, but also you mentioned project management and all that. Well, let's say cybersecurity. How, if people listening to this or watching it thinking, I have to have a look into that, where would you suggest they go and take a look? Or
there's a variety of people offering training courses, ex-military firms offering training courses, then an ability to get into cybersecurity as a result. To be honest, I'd have a look into it and work out how you fit in. But also, cybersecurity incident response teams, every single one of the big banks has them. I imagine that every single large organisation has one, because data security and breaches and everything else is so massive. I would say look at the incident response teams, because if you've ever run an ops desk, been in ops generally, if you've ever had to fuse information, been a watchkeeper, for example, where you've taken in or you've taken in information, you've worked out what's happening, you've fused it together, and then you've briefed somebody else.
Singlers. Sounds like nearly every singler I've ever met.
Then you can run an incident response team if something's going on, and whether that be a cyber incident or a fraud incident or a criminal incident within, anything that happens, because there's a variety of different things. So cybersecurity feeds into a variety of things. So cyber might be the way in, but actually it might end up being fraud, or it's straight theft or whatever. But to run an incident, to work out what's happening, that is absolutely, it's an operations centre. If you've ever worked in ops anywhere and you've fused information, or you've been responsible for, any of the guys that worked in the joint fire cells, they were fusing information to work out where they needed to have an effect. And that is exactly the same as they do in any of those. So that's a really easy way into cybersecurity. So any of the operations team, anything like that, there's heaps of stuff going on in that space, and it's growing all the time. If you're looking to do any startup stuff, I know that there's an organisation working with the National Cybersecurity Centre to give tech startups. So looking on the government websites is a really good thing as well, which really surprised me. But because it's such a growth area, they're massively trying to work. They're just trying to create the space for people to be able to innovate, people with ideas to be able to innovate and to link in, so they can use that expertise to their to the benefit of the greater good, if you like. So the government websites, and definitely just look and see what the large organisations are doing. The same way, I said no to banking. I said, no, I don't want to work for a bank, because I made this really daft thing. It's money. And then you look and you go, well, of course they've got an entire setup. So they've got an HR setup, they've got an engineering setup, there is an IT setup. Everything that you found anywhere, has to run a large organisation. So just because the front layer is something you're not interested in, there are so many other functions within it, and from admin all the way through to buildings, CRE. We have a CRE that just amused me. I'm like, Commander Royal Engineers? No, it's obviously not that. It's commercial real estate. But if you've been involved in maintenance of buildings, you go and work in there, and just every single large organisation's got one, and that's the key, is to look and go, okay, so where's my read across in that large organisation?
Cool.
You add value everywhere.
Good advice. Good advice.
Thank you.
Shameless plug opportunity. Anything you want to mention? Anything at all?
I think John Egan Trust is one thing. I think Veterans Lifeline's another. I mentioned Nick doing amazing work, and check out his website, definitely. He, like I say, actively preventing veterans from committing suicide, which is really keen, and just trying to help people get back on their feet. And just a great charity. Who else would I plug? I think probably Rugby for Heroes, for the amount they've done, and 353 as well. I guess just doing all the standard, because they've been to have been involved with them over the last few years has been superb. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and Oscar, thank you.
Yeah.